All right, so now I would like to introduce Allison Rollins. She is going to continue on with the presentation tonight. And, before we get rolling with your presentation, Allie, if you could take a little bit of time to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you, that would be fabulous.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for calling in. And it's nice to see some new names on the list here. I really appreciate it. I thought it would just be Carrie and I and maybe Lydia. So I'm glad that you guys are here. I am a parent guide with Guide by Your Side in Illinois, and I'm also a teacher of the deaf and a DTH. I will go into a little bit more about my family in a few minutes. So the presentation tonight is on unilateral hearing loss, and I'm going to be discussing some research and talk about how having a unilateral hearing loss impacts language and can impact social and emotional development as well. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I have told my children and my husband to zip it and be quiet and not play with the dog, so hopefully this will be okay. I know Carrie mentioned to hold questions till the end, which would be great, but there is a little hand up icon that you can press if you can't hear me, or you can send a little chat message, and I'll try to keep my eye out for that too if for some reason my phone doesn't sound clear. So let's get started. A little bit about me. As I was saying, I'm a teacher of the deaf. I teach in a total communication program, so we do use sign language and speech. I'm a DTH, part-time, and a parent guide. And I was asked to do this presentation because of some of those variables and also because of my family situation. I've been married for 17 years, and my husband also has hearing loss. He has profound hearing loss bilaterally, and it is genetic on his side of the family. So his mom has a unilateral hearing loss, and my 13-year-old has a unilateral hearing loss as well. It's due to Waardenburg's. That's the genetic syndrome that causes the hearing loss in our family. And there's a 50-50 chance of having Waardenburg's. And if you have Waardenburg syndrome, then for us, there was like a 20 to 40% chance of some sort of hearing loss. So out of the 50-50, both my boys have Waardenburg, and both my boys have hearing loss. My younger one has profound sensory neural hearing loss. So, yeah, I just can't get away, but that's okay. It's become my life, and I love it. So one caveat I want to make sure everybody understands, I explained my job. I am not an audiologist, so I'm just presenting this from my own experience as a parent guide, discussing things with other families, and also my own experience within my family, and based on some research and presentations that I've been part of. So some research results, we went to the EDDI conference, which was in Louisville, and there were presenters, Allison Seedy and Christine Yoshinaga, and they did a presentation discussing unilateral hearing loss, and they had done some research and had some families. So I'm going to try to just go through this a little quickly because statistics can get overwhelming, and at least to me, I don't really remember numbers that well. So just based on their research, they found that 40% of families that they surveyed received early intervention services just once a month for the children that have unilateral hearing loss. So normally, kids that have sensory neural bilateral hearing loss tend to have services weekly, but kids with unilateral tend to get services just once a month. But that's better 10 years ago or 13 years ago when my son was diagnosed and I tried to get him early intervention. He actually didn't qualify based on the qualifications necessary. So at least it's come a long way, and now they do qualify, even though there's a unilateral hearing loss. They found that 25 to 35% of the participants in their study did have some delay in language, and that's seen throughout the presentations that I've been to and the research that I've read online. Maybe you have as well, I don't know, but there's a lot of discussion about there being a delay in language and also possibility of having academic difficulties, possibly falling behind. And that's usually not apparent for many reasons until the child is about 2 years of age. When they're not talking as much, that's when families start to notice that, oh, maybe there really is a little bit of more of a problem than we thought. And as the age goes on, as they get a little bit older, the demands for language increase, so that's why you see the language delay. Based on their research that I was discussing, they recommended that children should be reevaluated after turning 2. So even if they were diagnosed before 1, they should be seen by the audiologist again within at least every 6 months to a year, and then again at 2 years of age, and then before they start preschool, just to make sure that they have all the services that they need lined up. Some more statistics here. One thing that I did not realize was that CMV, cytomegalovirus, is the most common cause of the prelinguistic unilateral hearing loss, which I never knew, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Another study that I read about was in Tennessee and Arizona. They showed that 25 to 35% of children with unilateral hearing loss failed 1 grade, and 62% of children that were researched had hearing loss in their right ear. Most of the hearing loss tended to be severe to profound in the one ear. So mentioning about the failed grades and falling behind, but I want you to know, if you're a parent on the line, not to get too caught up, because 60% of children with unilateral hearing loss are doing just fine in school. So don't panic, because sometimes the numbers can scare the wits out of you. At least it can for me. Some things comparing the left ear versus the right ear, whether or not it makes a difference for which side the hearing loss is on. The left side of the brain is usually involved with language and logic and analytical thinking. So various professors that study neuroscience have found that most people process speech and language on the left side of their brain. So if their right ear can hear, that sometimes could be better for the child to understand language and be able to express language. That's what they found. Doesn't always, it's not like every single person that can hear in their right ear does better because of the left brain activity, but that tends to be something that they've noticed. So I don't know how many of you, when you listen on the phone, but I, for some reason, cannot hear on the phone. I can, but I'm not as comfortable hearing on the phone unless I use my right ear. And I think that, I found that interesting when they mentioned that, because it goes along with the whole left brain activity. There's a website called Success for Children with Hearing Loss. I don't know how many of you have seen that online, but I get updates from them every month or so, and they do have a page about unilateral hearing loss. So I took some of the information for the presentation tonight from there. So on their website, they said that 1 out of every 5 babies who are found to have hearing loss have it in just 1 ear. So unilateral hearing loss, 1 out of every 5 babies. So that kind of seems like a lot to me. And that a lot of parents think that, oh, well, it's just 1 ear, so it's fine, their other ear is fine. And it can be, but parents might not realize that it also can cause a lot of difficulty, only having 1 ear. And it can cause learning problems, as I mentioned before. So one ear cannot listen the same as two ears in all situations. They do fine, but not in all situations. Some common challenges, if you have a child with hearing loss, you may have noticed this already. A big one is difficulty localizing, so figuring out where the sound is coming from, and difficulty hearing in noisier places, like a restaurant or an amusement park, a museum, gym, lunch at school, the lunchroom. Those places, it's very difficult for a child with unilateral hearing loss especially to hear conversations. So two ears listening together can hear just a little bit better than one ear working alone. When you have two working ears, it's easier to be able to focus in and try to block out the extraneous noise. But when you only have one ear, it makes it much more difficult to do that. So that would make it harder for a child with unilateral hearing loss to pick up new words, especially in noisy situations. And also hearing from a distance is a challenge. Some more statistics to ponder. Some of them I've mentioned already, but like I said, I try to gather my information from a number of sources to make sure I covered everything. Children with unilateral hearing loss may be 10 times more likely to fail a grade in school or need special help to keep up in school. Again, don't panic when you hear this information. 1/3 to 1/2 of children with hearing loss who have not received help to hear better have problems learning in school. 1/3 of children with normal hearing in one ear and hearing loss in the other ear are slower to develop how they express themselves with words. And the delays don't often show up, as I mentioned before, until the child is around 18 months to 2 years. 1/5 of children with hearing loss in one ear have some problems getting along with others. They may make poor behavior choices or not be able to play easily with others, which I find interesting. 1/4 of the children with hearing loss in one ear have hearing changes in their better ear over time. They might develop permanent hearing loss in their good ear, usually by the time they start school. So it's important for families that have a child with unilateral hearing loss, as mentioned earlier, to keep up with the audiology appointments and make sure that there isn't any further hearing loss. If it's a mild to moderate hearing loss in just the one ear, it may progress to a more profound, and it also may progress in the other ear. So it's important for parents to keep aware of that information. What to consider for hearing technology. Unilateral hearing loss complicates what to do for fitting a hearing aid more than bilateral profound hearing loss, which I have definitely found in my own family. So when you have a baby, there's a low signal to noise ratio, which means you're holding your baby, you're close to their ear. So they probably might not need a hearing aid when they're infants. But of course, like I said before, I'm not an audiologist, so this would be something you discuss with your audiologist, whether or not a hearing aid would be beneficial to your child. But a lot of times audiologists will say to wait a little longer because the baby is always held close. Around 12 months when the child is starting to move, that would be probably another good time to consider a hearing aid possibly, because the child is on the move. The parent might be standing up as the child is standing up and walking, so their mouth is further away from the child's ear. So a hearing aid might be more beneficial then. When fitting a cross aid, which is the receiver on the better ear that takes the information to another aid, on the other side, the receiver would be on the worse ear, and the person talking in the ear that can't hear, the information would go to the better ear. That's what a cross aid tends to do. but it's important to make sure the child is mature enough to monitor the environment and know when it's too loud for that side, which I'll discuss from my personal experience as well. I'm sorry, I'm going to pause for a second, but I'm hearing some noise on the other end. If you guys can all make sure your phones are muted, that would be helpful. Okay, so whether or not to get an FM or a hearing aid, again, these are all things to talk about with your school district and with your audiologist. But an FM provides the best result for speech perception when it's a noisy situation, because it's at the ear level. Well, if it's at the ear level or if it's on a desktop, they do better than a sound field, which is like a big speaker for the whole classroom. So if your child is in school and they're using a sound field, that big speaker, and the teacher has a microphone, they need to be careful, or you need to be careful to make sure that the positioning of the child in the classroom and where the equipment is looked at, and make sure that it's in the proper place, that the child's in the proper place and the equipment's in the proper place. And your hearing itinerant or the audiologist can discuss those things with you and with the teacher as well. Sometimes parents don't follow through with the hearing aids because they don't see a communication problem, especially when their child is younger. So the wearing of the hearing aids is not as structured, and parents might not be as strict with their child to keep it on as they may with a child who has bilateral profound loss. They think, you know, the kids can hear so many sounds, so I'm not going to worry about it as much. But that's not always the best thing to do. Okay, so some commonalities among people with unilateral hearing loss. A lot of people have told me, and my child also, they get headaches more often. They have tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears. They can be more off balance and get dizzy. Like I mentioned, inability to hear in noisy situations. Also very uncomfortable in noisy situations. So you might start seeing your child become more hyper and more moving around more, and it's not because there's an attention deficit problem. It might be, but it might not be. It might just be because they're uncomfortable and they don't know how to express it. They don't understand why, and so they're just trying to move around and figure out the best way to hear. It puts their brain into overdrive. They're trying to process so much information amongst so much noise, and it's hard to do with just one ear. And therefore, they can get more fatigued, more tired. So if you're a parent and you have a child with hearing loss, if you're on the call, you may have noticed your child coming home from school and being really tired and think, why is my child so tired? Maybe they're not eating right, maybe they're really not sleeping well, but it might just be that they were concentrating so hard at school that when they get home, they need that extra little break to maybe close their eyes for a little bit. If they do use a hearing aid, take the hearing aid off, just rest for a little bit before they jump right into homework or other activities. So it's common for them to miss information, and also the turning head phenomena. I don't know, like I said, I don't know who's on the call, who has a child with hearing loss that's on the call, but the turning head phenomena I'm very familiar with, where if you talk to your child on their deaf side, they'll turn their entire head around like an owl so that they can hear you with their good ear. It's just kind of become a joke in our family. You gotta laugh sometimes, or you can get upset if you don't laugh. So some of my personal observations, like I've commented a little bit, when Max was little and he was in preschool, we noticed that he didn't like to play in groups, and throughout his life, we've always wondered, is this a hearing thing or is it his personality? And I have friends that have unilateral hearing loss that are the same way. My mother-in-law is the same way, and so it's hard to say, but, you know, it seems like they just become that way. Their personality sort of adapts possibly to become that way, where they're just, because it's too loud and it's too hard to follow along in a larger group, they don't like to be in a larger group, and so they seem like they're more loners. Whenever we go to a restaurant, he always wanted to bring a book or something that he can do, and if he didn't have anything, he would become very, very antsy. We noticed that. We always wondered if there was, if it was the hearing or if it was his personality. We also noticed that he misunderstood sentences. Sorry, that was my son. I guess the fear of death didn't work. Okay, he misunderstood sentences. So, for example, I would say, "Did you leave this here?" And he heard, "Did you eat this pear?" That's just a silly example, but oftentimes that will happen in my family. And a lot of, "Huh?" when I say something. Sometimes I have to even say, "What did you hear me say?" and have him repeat it back, because I know he heard me, but he doesn't give it time to process. He definitely has had trouble localizing. We noticed very young that I would have to say, if I'm in the kitchen and he was in the other room, I'd have to say, "I'm in the kitchen," or "I'm in the laundry room." I couldn't just say, "Max, I'm over here," because he wouldn't know where here is. He does have a high-frequency loss in his better ear, so for us, he is more hard of hearing. He considers himself hard of hearing, and his speech is a little slushy. I'm sure if there's a speech therapist on the call, you'd be like, "Well, that's not a term," but it is to me, and the only way I can describe it is it's slushy, because his S's aren't as clear, kind of sounds a little bit like a lisp, because he can't hear the high frequencies very well. So some things I did personally with Max when he was a baby, I made sure that I was on his right side, which is his better ear. He was always on my left. And anytime I would read to him, if he was facing away from me, then I would speak into his right ear. When he was a baby, in his car seat, I had him on the passenger side because he was facing backwards, so his right ear was closer to me, because if I was the driver, then once he turned around, I had him behind the driver's seat so that the noisy window is on his deaf side. It wouldn't make a difference, because if it was on his better side and there was all this noise from the window, then he wouldn't be able to hear as well. As he got older, I had to direct him when a person was talking to him, especially in loud situations. So we'd be with family, and my dad would ask Max a question, and he would totally miss it. And I'd say, "Max, Grandpa asked you a question," and point to where Grandpa was. And he'd say, "Oh, sorry." And I'd have to have my dad repeat. I still have to teach my family and friends constantly what to do, and remind them that when he can and can't hear as well, and remind them that he didn't ignore them, that he missed it, so can you repeat that? And it's been a lot of training for Max to learn how to advocate for himself. But the problem is that when you can't hear as well, sometimes you miss it, but you didn't even know you missed it, so you don't know to ask for repetition or clarification. You just miss it, which goes back to the language development and slower progress with learning language, because they don't pick up as easily as a completely hearing child. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of water really quick. Okay. So when Max was 5, we did try a hearing aid before he went to school for kindergarten, and he just kept losing it. He would take it off in his art class and leave it somewhere. And I really don't think he was trying to be bad. I think he was just really trying to tell us that it wasn't working. So I call that an epic fail, because it just was amplifying the noise in his good ear, and it wasn't helping him at all. Then in first grade, we got him an FM through the school district, but he didn't like it and he didn't want to wear it. And then in second grade, he realized the material was getting harder, and he actually asked for it himself, so we got it for him again. And in second grade, that's also when we did finally get him diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. He was, we did suspect it, but because of the hearing loss, it was hard to diagnose. And so it took a little while, but having the FM helped him a little bit, except that with the ADHD, it was more of a challenge for when he had to switch classes. He has trouble remembering to pass the microphone to the next teacher. Then the cross aid came out being, I'm totally losing my train of thought. It was separate, where it used to be on a band, like this metal headband, and now you have it, I can't think of the word right now, but not connected. And we tried that. The problem was that it still was like a hearing aid in his better ear, and even though the audiologist tried to minimize the gain, the amplification, it still amplified the noise, so he just could not, he couldn't do it. He just didn't like it. At first, of course, he loved it, and then once our trial was up, he decided, yeah, not so much. I don't really want this. So we tried a Baja with the soft band, which he also said he liked, but I really couldn't send him to school with a headband. So he just, you know, he was in middle school. I was afraid he was going to lose it. He, by that time, did have the FM and was getting better, passing the mic. So we didn't want him wearing the Baja to school and then changing to put the FM on. He has a behind-the-ear FM. So it was just complicated. So we ended up not going through with that. Also, I'm just not prepared for the surgery for him for that right now, because he still is doing really well in school. Academically, it's not something that we're pursuing at this time. So all through school until 6th grade, actually, we didn't even have a 504 to be able to use the FM, and he didn't really need, he didn't have any goals for his ADHD either, so we didn't have an IEP. But then when his ADHD really started to be the bigger problem, that's when we finally started an IEP, the process of getting him an IEP. And he has goals that are really more related to his ADHD, like his executive functioning skills. But he does have an itinerant teacher, and he has a goal for him to be assertive and make sure that he tells the teacher and be able to pass the mic and speak up and notice when situations are more difficult to hear than others. So when he went to the audiologist, we did bring the cross system, and she did do some testing to see what, you know, which is better, and should I keep him using the cross system? Should I pursue that and ask the school district to get an FM that would be fitted to that system, or should we just stick with just the behind-the-ear FM and forget the cross system? And when she tested him, she did notice that it amplified sound. He did way worse on his speech than he did with just the FM. So it's sitting in our drawer, and who knows, maybe something will come up where it will be beneficial, and we'll go back to it. But for now, we are just sticking with the FM. But I have been trying to find another way, since we do use sign language, but he won't, I'm sure, watch a sign language interpreter for school. I've been looking into how to find something similar to CART. I know CART is very expensive, and I can't imagine the school district would be willing to pay for that on a daily basis. I know that there are school districts that do, which I'm always like amazed and would like to know how. There's some newer systems. There's something that I did find on that website that I mentioned earlier, Success for Children with Hearing Loss, called the Interact AS device, and that's where the teacher does wear a microphone, and the teacher has to set the microphone up so it recognizes his speech or her speech, and then it will go directly to the child's iPod or iPad or laptop, and so it will look like open captioning. The nice part about that is that you could save the notes. So I really like that because then he can go back, Max would be able to go back and reread some of the information that he missed. Note-taking is very hard for him because he's trying to watch the teacher's mouth and make sure he's getting all the information, and then his writing is terrible because the ADHD is just a mess. So the teachers will give him their notes or sometimes try to get notes from his friends, but I'm definitely thinking ahead to high school, which is next year, and so that's why I've been asking the school district to try to get the Interact AS system this year so that we can do it as a trial basis and see how it really works. He does have a group of friends, which is nice. He's with them a lot. He's in the more advanced classes, so they always stick together. But he doesn't have like a huge group of friends. And I don't know because I'm a girl, and I did have like a big group of girlfriends, and we always were talking and always wanting to get together. But he doesn't really care, and I don't know if that's a thing of all kids today, or if it's a boy thing, or if it is a hearing thing, or what. But he will love to play with our neighbor or have one friend over, but he doesn't really initiate either. So I don't know. I'm still learning. You know, I have this degree, and I have been working in the field, and I have this family, and you think that I have the answers, but I don't when it comes to my own. Still always wondering, still trying to learn. And, you know, if anybody has at the end of this presentation anything to say about that, I would love to hear it. We have always had the closed captioning on the TV. I can't even watch TV without it anymore. And that's always a good thing to start when kids are babies. It helps with reading. I'm sure of it. And when we go to the movies, all three of my boys, my husband and my two kids, always ask for the captioning devices. So I hope you're familiar with that because it definitely helps. We just went on a field trip to an open caption movie last Friday. We saw Peanuts, the Charlie Brown movie. It was really cute. It was open caption. But after the movie, I brought the kids over to the desk and asked them to give me one of those captioning devices to show them, the digital ones that they have now. And none of my students, there's about 50 students, and none of them had ever seen one before. So that kind of broke my heart because they're kindergarten through 8th grade. So at least I would have hoped the 8th graders would have seen it, but nobody knew what it was for. So hopefully you're learning about that a little bit today, too, if you haven't become familiar with that. And you'll know to ask for that when you go with your child. Even if you think they're too young to read, it would be good to start so that they can be advocates for themselves when they get older. Some things that you can do in your own family is keep the TV off or the volume very low most of the day. I know, if they're watching TV, they're probably going to want the volume on. Actually, my younger son likes his implants off and doesn't care to watch with the volume sometimes, but when he does want the volume, it's very loud. I have to go upstairs. And keep the air conditioning and the fan on low, play away from the fan or the noise. A lot of times I go into the houses for early intervention and I have to ask the families to please turn the TV off and maybe turn the fan down a little bit so that the child can hear better, at least when we're working or when you're doing a language-based activity. Just try to be a little bit more aware of that. As I mentioned earlier, stay close to their better ear at a closer distance because when you're further away, then it makes it more difficult to hear. Repeat what you said if they ask you to, and repeat what others might have said to make sure that your child heard it or ask your child to repeat. One thing I didn't put on my PowerPoint, but that just popped into my head was to try really hard to not say never mind to your child, or I'll tell you later, or it's not important. All of my deaf friends have told me, and my hard of hearing friends, so many people, my students have told me that the worst thing that their family or friends have said to them has been, when they've asked, what did you say, has been, never mind, or it's not important, or I'll tell you later. It's very hurtful. It makes it seem like they're not important enough, and they have been hurt by that. So I've tried to make an effort to make sure that I never say that in my house. I'm sure that there's times, like if I'm on the phone and my child wants to know what I'm saying, I might have to say, I'll tell you later. But if I'm talking to somebody else and my other child can hear what I'm saying, or other people in the room can hear it, it would be nice if your child with hearing loss also knows what's going on, because they're the ones that aren't picking it up as easily. So that leads to teach your child to advocate for him or herself. As if I want to say annoying, as it can be sometimes, the kids that are really loud and what did you say, what are you saying, what are you talking about, what happened, it could get really annoying. I have a lot of students in my classroom that do that, but they are advocating for themselves. They want to know. They are assertive, and they're the ones that are going to be successful because they want to know. And I try to remind parents not to make that a bad thing, to recognize that that is a good thing. There's a time and place when they need to just try to tone it down a little bit. Of course, you have to teach them when it's appropriate, but it is a good quality for kids with hearing loss to have. And also, of course, work closely with your audiologist to determine any treatment that needs to be done. Some suggestions for school. When your child is preschool age, when you're looking at daycare or any school situation, make sure you look before you sign them up, because some of the setups when I would do observations were those half walls or partitions. So the room was really noisy because there'd be one age group, like the 2-year-olds would be on one side of the wall and the 3-year-olds on another and the 4-year-olds on another, but it was all kind of open. And so, those kids are loud because they're crying. And so if you're trying to teach something, or if your child is trying to learn something, they might not be hearing it as well as the other kids. Make sure that your teacher is aware of the situation. Make sure the teacher knows which is the better ear, and you'll probably have to remind them more than once. Personally, I almost every year would tell the teacher, and the itinerant teacher would tell the teacher which ear is better, which side of the classroom my child should sit on, and I'd go for open house, and they'd have the desk on the wrong side of the room, so we'd have to change things. It happened almost every year. So just make sure that the teacher remains aware, and oftentimes the teachers like to change the tables in the groups of the students throughout the year, so make sure that if they do change your child's position, that it's still in the proper position, and that the teacher uses visual aids and handouts and writes on the board and points to the board and things like that, and knows to show their face so their child can lip read. Even if you think that they're not, they definitely are taking in clues from the face. I kind of mentioned about the sitting near the air conditioner or a running computer, the FM system. I'm looking through my notes here. Keep in close communication with your child's teacher to monitor progress. If they notice that there's a change in hearing, they may notice before you do. Make sure the teacher is aware about the localization. I've had to tell teachers before, because it does seem like the child isn't listening or is ignoring, especially on a playground. If they call their name, the child really might not hear. And you don't want them to be seen as like the bad child just because they couldn't hear. That would be terrible. It's not their fault. So make sure that the people that are working with your child know this and are aware before they jump to conclusions and start to say that your child is bad or something terrible like that. If you notice that your child is becoming more frustrated or having more difficulty in social situations, definitely you can ask for a social worker or counselor, some kind of lunch bunch, or ask for a lunch class buddy or something, somebody that can stay with your child that your child feels close to so they feel more comfortable. I like to also give information. I know the itinerant teacher does, but I give the teacher information about my child, about Max and Eli also. And I have a picture of the FM, or for Eli, I have a picture of his FMs and his implants so that if it falls apart or breaks apart that they can find the pieces. And I have a little list of things that they like and things that help them and that they're interested in, and just some information about hearing loss that a teacher might not normally know. And then I feel better even if they don't read it, because as a teacher I am the worst. Teachers are not known for wanting to read things because we have no time, but hopefully they do glance at it, they do look at it, especially with bullet points, and at least I feel better knowing that I had provided it. So things to look for in case, because like I said, your child might have a progressive hearing loss where in their better ear they might lose some hearing, or in their ear that does have hearing loss that might be mild or moderate and might progress. If you notice that they're getting more frustrated or they're even more tired at the end of the day, or if it seems like they're not paying attention more often, they are incorrect in responding, or if you're asking a request and they are incorrect in their response, or they're starting to act out, those are some signs that there might be some difficulty with hearing that wasn't difficult before, especially if your child has a cold. If they have a upper respiratory cold where their ears are plugged, their nose is plugged, their ears are plugged, that can cause like another, from what I've been told, another 10 decibel hearing loss. So that's a lot for a child who already has a hearing loss. If they do have a hearing aid and they have a cold, that if you're not aware, then wearing a hearing aid that has an ear mold can make it hurt more because of the compact of the ear mold and pushing in on the inner ear where there's the yucky, slimy stuff. Yeah, I'm not an audiologist. I don't know the terminology. So those are some things to look for, and just to make sure that if their speech starts to change a little bit, you might notice that, like I said, Max has kind of slushy speech, and I definitely notice his speech is not as clear when he's in louder situations. So if you notice more regularly that your child's speech starts to change, I would definitely recommend calling the audiologist and taking them in for a checkup. So that is it. I know I kind of speak fast, so I apologize if you didn't get it all. Hopefully you can go back and listen. But if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask. And also here on my web PowerPoint, I put a couple of resources. SuccessForKidsWithHearingLoss.com. It's supposed to be all together. It looks like there's a space between success and for, but there's not supposed to be. That's a lot of really good information, and that's where you can find out about the Interact AS if you're wondering more about that. And then, of course, handsandvoices.org, and hopefully you know more resources yourself. If you have any that you would like to share, that would be fine too. Are there any questions? I think that's it. Did I lose you all? Or are you on mute?
I'm here, Allie.
Hi.
Hi, it's Carrie. So any questions for Allie before we end the call?
This is Kate. Allie, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you guys considered at any time doing a unilateral cochlear implant for your son?
That's a good question. I did ask about that hybrid that Cochlear has. And I did ask about the cochlear implant. They're still saying that kids with unilateral hearing loss don't qualify yet because it would be two different types of hearing, because one side would be like just regular hearing but amplified or whatever, and then the other side would be electrical, and now he's 13, and so it just might not work for him. I don't know what they're doing now for younger kids, for babies. If they're considering that, I'm not really up on what they're doing. I've heard that there have been more, but we haven't gone that route. I feel like I'd be more open to the possibility of that than the Baha, just because I'm so familiar with the cochlear implants. But so far, I mean, and Max has said before once, a few times, that he wishes that he could have a cochlear implant. That's why we tried the Baha. That's why we've tried the other things, because there have been times where he has been frustrated. But he still is doing very well in school, and he's still doing well enough. You know, I don't know if it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be common for kids with unilateral hearing loss to get the cochlear implant, and I'll be like, wow, when I'm, you know, an adult and Max is an adult, and think, I can't believe we never did that. But they weren't doing that back then. I mean, that's what we're saying now about having two cochlear implants. So, you know, I've thought about it, but I haven't pursued that much since I was told that he doesn't really qualify at this time.
Okay.
Have you? Have you?
No, we haven't aggressively looked into that yet. Dr. Young has been pushing for it some. I know she's done a handful of them to date, but I guess we're hesitant to take that route right now. It seems a little aggressive. Eli seems to be doing pretty great with his speech so far.
Aww.
So it's just kind of a wait and see at this point. I just didn't know if you had considered it, and if so, why you hadn't taken that route. So
yeah, I am not. I applaud those that are willing to do that for their child, but I'm not willing to do that for my child as a guinea pig yet. Like, I don't want him to be the first. I need other people to do it. I haven't been able to actively pursue it like you say.
Right.
It's not there yet. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I have a question.
Okay.
My son, he's 3.5, and he is profound in his right ear, and he is over a year behind in speech. Do you consider that more of a significant delay than it should be, or did Max ever have such a significant delay and then catch up at a certain age, or what do you think about that kind of a delay?
Well, I'm not a speech therapist, so I can't really say, and sometimes that's just, you know, the speeches, that might even be something not completely related to the hearing loss. You know, it might be partially hearing loss, it might be some other things going on. I did get him tested for early intervention when he was 2, and he was kind of on the border. He didn't qualify again based on speech, but at 3 he did. And so he did have an IEP for a very short time for speech, but then he reached the goal and he was out. So he was late to really talk, but we sign, and so I kind of attributed it to that. So it's hard to say. I mean, he's getting, your child is getting speech therapy though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they're happy with his progress. I just feel like that's a pretty significant delay.
Mom, I am very next.
It sounded good to me. I mean, it's so hard as a parent. If you could just, like, jump ahead and see that everything's okay and then come back and relax, it would be so nice if we could do that, you know. But as long as your therapists are seeing progress and you're feeling like you're seeing progress, it's so hard because every child is so different. And I mean, I tell parents all the time, like, I'll see their kids up until they're 3, and they may not even be talking very much. And then they leave me, and then I will check in with them just because I don't like letting go of anybody that I ever meet. and I'll check in and see how they're doing, and they're like talking up a storm. And it's just because it takes them a little bit longer, you know. So just keep up, and it sounds like you're right on it. I think it's great. You're doing all the right things, and, you know, as long as you keep up with what you need to do, I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be any more, more progress.
when he was learning, like my son is excellent with ABCs and 1, 2, 3, but conversational speech, like what did you have at snack today, for example, he doesn't even know the question or the answer, and I don't know if that's a hearing thing or just a learning delay. If your child had anything like that, like just a different learning style.
I mean, the kids that I teach definitely have that. They have a more profound hearing loss in both ears, and I've seen that a lot. And it might just be your child might just be one of those kiddos that take a little bit longer to understand, and that might be something you need to work on directly. You know, like I said, I mean, sometimes they just don't pick up like a perfectly hearing child would. And so that might just be one of those things that he didn't pick up by listening to your conversation with somebody else. So it might be something you need to work on in therapy a little bit more. We didn't have that with Max, but you know, that's just us. I don't know.
Okay, right.
Children, it's so hard to say. Every child is so different that it's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Is that it?
This is Liz. I do have a question if we have a minute.
Sure.
My daughter she had a hearing test when she was about 3 1/2, and it was fine. And we went in thinking she did tubes right after she turned 4 and found out she had severe and profound loss in just the right ear, and she was immediately fit for a hearing aid. And so this is the year that we're prepping to go to kindergarten next year. And I feel like, I kind of feel like we're getting ready to walk into battle. I feel as though there might be a slight speech delay, but not a significant one. And while I don't feel that she's, at this point, going to need intervention within the classroom, there are different accommodations she's going to require throughout the day. She does get very easily frustrated. She acts out at times. She does get very tired. And is there a direction somebody can point us in terms of how to approach the school district? Because at this point, it's just been shut down. She will not be evaluated. Now, I know that they can't tell me that. I'm a counselor and a 504 coordinator, so I know that she can be evaluated, and she will be. I push it hard enough, but I also don't want to go into kindergarten as her being labeled that kid whose parents. And I feel like I don't want to walk into this battle, but, I mean, my goodness. She woke up one day and she couldn't hear anymore.
Wow.
And at 4, that has to be petrifying, and she couldn't explain it to us.
Right.
It's the piece that we found it, but, and we don't know, her audiologist is wonderful, but like she said, it's a coin toss. It's 50-50. We don't know what caused the loss. She was a preemie. She did spend time in the NICU, but typically we would see loss like that in an infant, not at age 4.
Right.
And so it's 50-50 coin toss as to if she will go completely deaf and lose what she has on her left side. So I guess I don't even know where to turn as a parent to find somebody to kind of point me in the direction of how to deal with the school district on this.
Does she go to the preschool through the school district now, or do you take her to?
No, we have she's in a private preschool.
So I would think you would contact your the school district, and they have a special ed coordinator, and there's usually like a supervisor who deals with hearing loss among a bunch of schools in the area. I don't know what school district you're in.
We're down in Typical, Illinois.
Okay. So, yeah, you would contact the school district and find out, and you could discuss it with them. They would at least you know, I know you said they're saying they're not going to test her, but at least if you talk to the supervisor, then they may be able to at least hook you up with an itinerant teacher that can go in and speak to the teacher and get the school aware of what it's like for kids with hearing loss. And I have sent the teachers links to things. I don't know if you've looked on the web where there's like YouTube things of a teacher talking and showing the difference of what it's like for the child with hearing loss with the FM, without the FM, what it sounds like, so the teacher can really see that you're not joking, like this is really serious, you have to take this seriously. So like even if your school district, you know, I would say the teacher wants your child to succeed. You know, your school, the principal wants your child to succeed too.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think as long as you're not like, I want this for my, you know, that never works anyway. So
no,
you're open and you're showing it talking about it out of concern and wanting to help them understand it better, then I think that they will be definitely open to that. But those are some ideas, you know, things to get started.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Oops, sorry. Do you hear my other line ringing? Why did that happen? Anybody else? I forgot to put my own email on here, I think. But Carrie could get you my email. I'll say it. Am I on here? No, it's Carrie's. My email is alirollins@gmail.com. So if you have any questions, you can definitely email me, and I'll be happy to get back to you and answer anything I can. Or if I don't know the answer, which is a possibility, I will be happy to try to find the information for you.
Can you say your email one more time?
Sure. It's Allie Rollins. So it's ALIROLLINS, as in Sam, @gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for all this.
No problem. No problem.
All right. Any other questions for Allie? Well, thank you all for being on the call. I know we ran a little bit over, but it was a great time of questions and answers and a great presentation. So thank you so much, Allie. Everyone have a wonderful holiday week. And again, tune in January for our next call. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.